Tonight, please sit back, slow your breathing, and listen to the story of a son who knelt before his mother on an unforgettable Thanksgiving night. This story is not for those in a hurry. Listen to it like the sound of rain falling outside. Slow, deep, and long enough for your heart to ache just once. I'll start right away. Night always falls earlier in Rivermud Village than elsewhere. As the sun sets behind the trees along the riverbank, the entire village is bathed in the weary yellow light of flickering oil lamps. The red dirt road that runs through the village is soft and muddy after the afternoon rain. Every step leaves a trail of mud, as if the land here never wants to let anyone escape its fate. And at the end of that road, there is a boy, Ethan Walker. He stands before a small wooden house, its old corrugated iron roof rattling in the wind. His bare feet are covered in mud. His shirt is worn at the collar, faded by the sun. But his eyes are different. They don't droop like most of the other children in the village. The narrator speaks softly, as if afraid to break the silence. Ethan Walker grew up in Rivermud Village, where people are born with the smell of mud, and dreams are often buried deeper than seeds. From inside the house, a woman's voice rang out, tired but warm. Margaret Walker. Ethan, come eat. The rice is getting cold. She stepped out the door. A thin woman, her back slightly hunched, her hands calloused like tree bark. The oil lamp cast a light on her face, marked by time, but her eyes were still as gentle as they were in her youth. Ethan turned around. He wiped the mud from his trousers and went inside. The meal consisted only of white rice and a bowl of watery soup. Outside, the sounds of frogs mingled with the lapping of the river. Margaret put the only vegetable in his bowl. Ethan. Mother, you eat? I'm full. She gently shook her head, a faint smile on her face. Margaret, you eat. You have school tomorrow. Ethan bowed his head, silent. He ate very slowly, as if each grain of rice carried an unspoken promise. Margaret Walker couldn't read, didn't understand technology, and didn't dream of skyscrapers. But she believed one thing: her son didn't belong here. After eating, Ethan took an old book and sat close to the oil lamp. The pages were yellowed, the print faded. Margaret looked at her son for a long time. Margaret, softly. Later, if you go far away, don't look back for me. Ethan looked up. Ethan, I will come back to get you. Yes. She smiled, but her eyes were moist. The storyteller lowered her voice, like a whisper into the night. That night, in Rivermud Village, there was a boy who didn't know how long the road ahead of him would be. Nor did he know that the mud under his feet today would follow him for the rest of his life. Outside, the wind blew stronger. The oil lamp flickered gently. And the story began there. The morning in Rivermud Village began with the smell of damp mud and the off-key crowing of roosters. A thin mist hung over the river like an old, unwashed cloth. Ethan Walker stood by the water's edge, his canvas backpack at his feet. Not much. A few sets of clothes, an old book, and all he could carry from his childhood. The storyteller spoke in a low, even voice. There are departures without fanfare. No one to see them off. No one to cry. Only the earth beneath their feet knows that someone is about to disappear from it. Margaret Walker stood behind her son. She said nothing. She only straightened the straps of his backpack, a familiar gesture she had practiced hundreds of times in her head. Margaret, the road is long. Remember to go straight. Don't meander like this river. 8. Ethan nodded. He bent down, touching the wet mud. Ethan, whispering, I will come back. I promise. E.R. Margaret didn't answer. She just placed her hand on her son's head and patted him gently. The narrator sighed softly. The poor mother didn't keep her son. She knew that if she did, they would both be trapped. The old bus stopped at the edge of the village, black smoke billowing out, smelling of burning oil. Ethan boarded, without looking back. As the wheels rolled along the red dirt road, Rivermud Village slowly receded into the distance. The roofs of the houses gradually lowered. The river was just a faint streak of light. Inside the bus, Ethan sat by the window. Outside, the landscape changed color. Mud gave way to asphalt. Strange signs appeared. The narrator continued. That was the first time Ethan Walker had left his world. And it was also the first time he understood that going away wasn't about escaping, but about becoming a different person. As the bus entered Grayport City, the sky seemed to descend. The high-rise buildings stood cold and impersonal, their glass surfaces reflecting the light without emotion. The harbor appeared, its cranes towering like steel arms. Ethan stepped off the train. The train whistles, the voices, the sound of shoes tapping on the pavement assaulted his ears. He stood still for a moment. Small. Lost. Ethan, muttering, "Is this where I'm going to live?" The narrator lowered his voice, becoming deeper. Grayport City doesn't welcome anyone. It only tests who is tough enough to survive. Ethan tightened his grip on his backpack. He walked. Each step echoed on the dry, cold cement. No more mud. No more footprints. Only the road ahead. And somewhere in this city, fate was silently waiting for him, under a name Ethan had never heard, Isabella Adams. The nightlights came on. The city began to breathe. And the real journey had just begun. Grayport City doesn't sleep. It just changes shifts. By day, the city gleams with glass and steel. At night, it breathes smoke, garbage, and crushed dreams. Ethan Walker sleeps on a bunk bed in a cramped room, where 4 strangers share the same suffocating space. Low ceiling. Peeling walls. The smell of sweat and grease clings to every breath. The narrator's voice is monotonous. Grayport City doesn't ask where you're from. It only asks how long you can endure. By day, Ethan works as a waiter in a diner near the harbor. By night, he cleans a warehouse for a shipping company. 2 jobs, 1 body. His hands, once accustomed to mud, are now used to bleach and icy cold crates. His back aches. His eyes sting from lack of sleep. A diner manager grumbles when Ethan drops a spoon. Manager, this isn't your village. Behave properly. Ike. Ethan bowed his head. Ethan. Sorry, I'll be careful. Over. The narrator lowered his voice, slowing it down. He learned to be silent. In Grayport City, silence was a currency. Some nights, Ethan sat by the tiny window in his boarding house, watching the distant harbor lights. He opened an old book, but the words were blurred. Images of Rivermud Village flashed through his mind. The muddy road. The oil lamp. His mother's calloused hands. Ethan whispered, as if to himself, Ethan, I'm still going, Mother. I have a stir. In a city of millions, there was a poor boy trying not to disappear. That evening, the restaurant where Ethan worked was rented out entirely for a party. The guests were unlike any other. Expensive suits, shiny leather shoes. Laughter echoed softly and distantly, as if they were on a different level of atmosphere. The manager adjusted his tie and said quickly, Manager, today we're serving the Addams family. Don't make a mistake. The name slipped through Ethan's ears without leaving a trace. Until she appeared. The glass door opened. A woman entered in the light. A simple yet elegant white dress. A slow, straight gait. A beautiful, cold face, as if she were unaccustomed to waiting for anyone. The narrator lowered his voice, almost whispering. Isabella Addams entered the room as if it belonged to her. Ethan froze for a brief second, not because of her beauty, but because of the distance. She belonged to another world. Ethan carried a tray of drinks past. A guest bumped lightly. The glass slipped from Ethan's hand and fell to the floor. The sound of shattering echoed, sharp and cold. The entire room fell silent. Ethan bowed deeply. Ethan, I'm sorry. I apologize. 2-3. The manager's face turned pale. The atmosphere was heavy. Isabella looked down. Her gaze rested on the bowed boy, his simple shirt, his hands trembling slightly. She spoke, her voice calm. Isabella, it's all right. Just a glass. The manager breathed a sigh of relief. Ethan instinctively looked up. In that moment, their eyes met. Not for long. Just long enough for both of them to vaguely realize something. The narrator spoke slowly. It wasn't love, just a momentary disconnect between two worlds. Isabella turned away first. Ethan stood still, his heart beating faster than usual. When the party ended, the city lights came on again. Ethan cleared the table silently. He didn't know her name. Nor did he know that from the moment the glass shattered, his life's path had taken a different turn. In Grayport City, sometimes fate doesn't knock. It just drops a glass and waits to see who bends down to pick it up. After that evening's party, Grayport City was still bustling as never before. But for Ethan Walker, the city suddenly seemed a little larger. Not because he had more money, but because a new image had appeared in his mind. Isabella Adams. There are people who only pass through our lives once, yet linger in our thoughts for a long time. In the days that followed, Ethan continued serving, cleaning the warehouse, and counting his meager wages. But whenever a well-dressed customer entered the restaurant, he would look up a little more often. Elsewhere in the city, Isabella sat in a brightly lit room. Large glass windows overlooked the harbor. A light-colored wooden desk, without a single scratch. She flipped through real estate project files with her father, her voice even. Isabella. The Eastern Harbor area still has potential, but we have to clear out the old working-class neighborhood. Okay. A middle-aged man nodded. Father Isabella, you see things through numbers. Good. I did miss. Isabella was silent. But for a very brief moment, the image of the waiter bending down to pick up the broken glass flashed through her mind. The narrator lowered her voice. She didn't understand why she remembered, and she didn't ask. One rainy afternoon, Ethan took shelter under an awning near a diner. His shirt was wet. His shoes were soaked. A luxurious car pulled up by the roadside. The door opened. Isabella stepped out, without an umbrella. They saw each other at the same time. Neither said anything. The sound of rain filled the silence. Isabella nodded slightly, as a matter of courtesy. Ethan responded with a slightly awkward bow. The distance between their two worlds wasn't money, but the fact that they didn't know what to say to each other. An opportunity came to Ethan Walker without fanfare. It came in the form of a question. One late night, as Ethan was cleaning the warehouse, his supervisor looked at him intently. Supervisor, do you know how to use a computer? Ethan looked up. Ethan. A little. Oh. Actually, he knew more than a little. Sleepless nights. Ethan studied online using an old computer he borrowed from his roommate. The narrator spoke slowly and steadily. There is knowledge learned in silence, like how people learn to survive. A few weeks later, Ethan was transferred to support the data department of a small logistics company. For the first time, he sat in an air-conditioned office. The screen was bright. The keyboard was clean. He wore a simple shirt, but his back was straighter. Grayport City was still cold. But it didn't feel as unfamiliar as before. One evening, Ethan was invited to a small tech event. Not a guest, just a technical support staff member. But the room was brightly lit. Conversations rang out in confident voices. And then, amidst the crowd, Ethan saw Isabella Adams. A dark dress. Not overly flashy, but still unmistakable. Isabella saw him too. This time, she took the initiative to approach him. Isabella, we've met before. Ethan was slightly flustered. Ethan. Yes. At the diner. A very brief silence. Isabella smiled, not as coldly as the first time. Isabella. You work here? Ethan. I'm learning how to stand here. The narrator's voice deepened, concluding the chapter. That night, Ethan Walker took his first step into the world of elites. Isabella Adams, for the first time, looked down, not from above. Outside the window, the city lit up like an unfulfilled promise. And the story began to pick up pace. The relationship between Ethan Walker and Isabella Adams had no clear name. It existed in brief conversations, accidental encounters, longer than necessary glances. The narrator lowers his voice. In Grayport City, feelings never go alone. They always carry power. One evening, Isabella took Ethan to another party. This time not a restaurant. The grand ballroom of a 5-star hotel. Ethan wore a borrowed suit, slightly too big in the shoulders. New shoes, but his steps were hesitant. Eyes swept over him. Quickly. Judging. Then turning away. A man from the Adams family approached Isabella. The man, "Who are you with?" Isabella replied calmly. Isabella. "A friend. You." He looked at Ethan, from head to toe. The man. "You, which floor are you on?" The question was as light as a breeze, but as sharp as a knife. Ethan smiled, but before he could speak, Isabella spoke up. Isabella. "He works in technology." 8. The atmosphere dropped a beat. The Adams family didn't need to shout. They just needed to ask the right questions. After the party, in the car, Isabella looked out the window. Isabella. "Don't you see? He doesn't belong there?" Ethan was silent for a moment. Ethan. "You were born there." and I am learning not to get lost. Isabella didn't answer, but her hand rested on his, very gently. Elsewhere, in the Addams family meeting room, the conversation continued. Isabella's father. You can't be serious with someone without a background. End quotes. Isabella looked up. Isabella, I don't choose background. I choose the person. The wall between two worlds isn't built of bricks. It's built of names. Margaret Walker arrived in Grayport City on a windy morning. She wore an old, well-washed shirt. Her shoes were new, but she wasn't used to them yet. The bus station was crowded. The noise made her stand still for a moment, as if she were in another world. Ethan ran up to her. Ethan. Mom. Margaret looked at her son, astonished. He was taller, thinner, but his eyes were steady. She reached out and touched his shoulder. Margaret, you've grown so big. Oh. There are mothers who don't need the city's acceptance. They just need their sons to stand firm. Ethan led his mother along the wide streets. The tall buildings made Margaret keep looking up. Margaret, here, I can't see the land. Very. Ethan chuckled softly. Ethan, but there are roads. Mom, I'd made. In the small rented room, Margaret sat on the bed, looking around. Margaret, are you living here? Ethan, just temporarily. Oh. She nodded, not asking any further questions. That afternoon, Ethan took his mother to the harbor. The wind blew strongly. The sea was gray. Margaret gazed into the distance. Margaret, this city isn't gentle. End quote. Ethan was silent. She turned and placed her hand on her son's. Margaret, but I see you're not afraid anymore. Marged. The narrator lowered her voice, concluding the chapter. When Margaret Walker first entered Grayport City, she brought nothing but faith. And sometimes, that's enough. Somewhere, amidst the glass buildings, two worlds were drawing closer. Slowly, and full of challenges. The meeting took place in a villa overlooking the sea. Transparent glass. Cool stone floor. Everything was so bright that there was no room for shadows. The Addams family sat around a long table, neatly dressed. Appropriate smiles. Margaret Walker entered with Ethan. She wore the simplest dress she owned. Her hair was neatly combed. Her back was straight, though her hands trembled slightly. There are parties not for eating. They are for measuring. Isabella stood up and pulled out a chair for Margaret. Isabella, please sit here. Margaret smiled and nodded. Margaret, thank you. Oh. An older woman from the Addams family looked at Margaret, her voice soft but sharp. The woman, "Where did you live before?" Margaret replied calmly. Margaret, "In Rivermud Village. A silence fell over the dining table. The name of the poor village stood out among the crystal glasses. The middle-aged man, "It's quite far. I suppose you're not familiar with this city." As Margaret looked straight ahead, her voice neither high nor low. Margaret, "I'm not familiar with many things, but I'm familiar with raising a child." Ethan gently squeezed his mother's hand under the table. The narrator's voice was low. This silence wasn't due to contempt. It was because no one had prepared an answer. Father Isabella put down his knife. "Father Isabella, how far do you think your son can go?" Margaret turned to look at Ethan, then back at the man opposite her. "Margaret, far or near doesn't matter. What matters is that he doesn't turn back while he's going." Isabella lowered her head, hiding the trembling in her eyes. The meal ended with brief pleasantries. No one won. No one lost. But when Margaret rose, everyone in the room knew. She hadn't come to ask permission. The narrator concludes the chapter with a quiet voice. That night, the Addams family met a woman with no possessions, and for the first time, they found themselves at a disadvantage. A great opportunity presented itself to Ethan Walker immediately after that meeting. An investment contract. A large-scale logistics technology project. But it came with conditions. A private meeting. A quiet room. The man representing the Addams family spoke frankly. The man, "If you want to go faster, go alone." Ethan understood. No further explanation needed. In Grayport City, success always comes with choices, and choices always come with a price. That night, Ethan sat alone by the harbor, phone in hand. Isabella's name lit up on the screen. He didn't call. His mother's image appeared. Rivermud Village. The muddy road. Ethan stood up. The next morning, he signed the contract. And at the same time, Ethan Walker publicly withdrew from all ties with the Addams family. He was no longer seen with Isabella. No more chance encounters. Isabella sought him out. "Isabella, what have you chosen?" Ethan looked at her, his voice low, not avoiding her gaze. "Ethan, I chose the path, but I didn't sell my soul." And Isabella smiled sadly. "Isabella, that's enough to lose me." She turned away. The narrator spoke slowly, painfully but surely. "There are decisions that aren't wrong. It's just that there's no one left to prove it." Night fell. Grayport City blazed brightly. Ethan stood alone in front of the tall building's glass windows. slow. The city moved incessantly. Somewhere far away, Margaret Walker sat by the window of her apartment, mending an old shirt. She didn't ask. She believed. Ethan Walker climbed higher, and the price he paid was the silence of the woman he loved. Grayport City first mentioned Ethan Walker's name in the financial newspapers. No big picture. Just a short, concise, cold line. Success in Grayport City didn't need fireworks. It just needed the right numbers. Ethan's logistics technology company grew rapidly. The system ran smoothly. Contracts followed one after another. Ethan moved to an office on a high floor. Large glass windows, overlooking the harbor. He stood there every morning, his hand resting on the cool glass. No more mud. No more smell of grease. But also no more hearing his name called by that familiar voice. In meetings, Ethan spoke little. When he spoke, everyone listened. "Partner, you're rising very quickly." Ethan replied, without smiling, "Ethan, I just didn't stop." There are people who climb to the top in their lifetime, and when they arrived, they realized the wind was strongest there. Margaret Walker visited her son's office once. She stood by the door, watching him in his well-fitting suit. "Margaret, you've done it." Ethan turned to her. "Ethan, I'm still working." She looked around the brightly lit room. "Margaret, it's so high up here. I'm getting a little dizzy." Ethan smiled slightly. "Ethan, I'm used to it." Margaret said nothing more. She just placed her hand on his back for longer than usual. Ethan Walker had reached the peak. But there was no one for him to turn to and share that moment with. Isabella Adams left Grayport City early one morning. No farewell party. No announcement. A small suitcase. A direct flight. Some people disappear not to escape, but to preserve the part of themselves that hasn't been bent. The news reached Ethan through a casual remark in a meeting. "Partner, I heard Ms. Adams went to Europe." Ethan paused on the keyboard. "Just for a second." "Ethan, is that so?" That night, Ethan drove along the roads he used to walk with Isabella. The old cafe. The rainy street corner. Everything was still there. Only one person was missing. In the empty apartment, Ethan opened his phone. No new messages. No goodbye. The narrator lowered his voice, slow as a breath. Isabella Adams left no void. She left behind an absence. Far away, Isabella stood by the window, looking at another city. Not as tall as Grayport City. But the sky was wider. She took the ring off her finger and placed it on the table. light, silent. Isabella, whispering. I tried. I. When Isabella left Grayport City, she took with her the only thing Ethan couldn't buy back, the moment they had once stood side by side. The plane took off. The city receded behind them. And on the top floor of a glass building, Ethan Walker stood looking down. The peak was still there, but the wind was much colder than before. Ethan Walker's downfall didn't come with a single crash. It came with small, slow cracks. Grayport City still mentioned his name in the news. But the tone was different. No one loses everything in a day. People lose gradually, little by little, until there's nothing left to hold on to. The market was volatile. The supply chain was broken. The numbers that had stood tall began to tilt. In the boardroom, Ethan was quieter than before. Partner, we need to cut. Quickly. Oh. Ethan looked at the data sheet. The numbers were as cold as glass. Ethan, cutting people is easy. Keeping people is hard. And no one answered. The nights that followed, Ethan stayed late at the office. The city below lit up and then faded. He placed his hand on the window pane. For the first time in years, his hand trembled. The peak didn't fall. The person standing there was there. Margaret Walker fell ill during the rainy season. Not seriously, but enough to frighten Ethan. He sat by his mother's bedside, in the small room. Margaret, you've gotten thinner. Ethan, I'm just tired. Mom. She looked at him for a long time. Margaret, do you still remember Rivermud Village? Ethan bowed his head. Ethan. Yes. Margaret. That's good. I concluded the story with a sigh. When everything begins to fall apart, the only thing left is where one comes from. Years passed. Grayport City changed. New buildings sprang up. Old names faded away. Ethan Walker no longer appeared on the front page. He still worked, but slower, more deeply. One afternoon, Ethan returned to Rivermud Village. The red dirt road was still there. The river still flowed slowly. There are places that don't wait for us to succeed. They only wait for us to return. On the village road, Ethan stopped when he saw a woman standing by the riverbank. A simple dress, her hair neatly tied back. It was Isabella. They looked at each other, not surprised. As if this meeting had been arranged long ago. Isabella. I heard you were back. End quote. Ethan. I don't know why I came back either. A gentle breeze blew. The mud clung to their shoes in the same way. For the first time, they stood on the same ground. Isabella looked at the river. Isabella, I left Grayport City to learn how to live slowly. Ethan, I left Grayport City because I couldn't run anymore. End quote. They both laughed. Not sad. Not happy. Isabella, if you had chosen differently that day. Ethan shook his head. Ethan, I would still be myself. Just, I would have come here sooner. Isabella nodded. They didn't hold hands. No promises. They just walked a short distance along the red dirt road, in silence. There are encounters that don't begin anew. Just to know that, no matter how far they've come, people can still stand beside each other without hiding. The sun set behind the trees. Their shadows stretched long on the muddy road. And the story ended there. If you're listening here, you've probably also come very far from where you started. Perhaps you've stood high above, surrounded by spotlights and praise. Or perhaps you're quietly walking, unnoticed. Ethan Walker once thought success was going up without looking back. Isabella Adams once thought freedom was leaving without looking back. And Margaret Walker knew something simpler, as long as her child doesn't get lost. Life isn't measured by the distance traveled, but by whether, when we stop, we still recognize our own feet. Thank you for sitting with me through this story. If you see a part of yourself in it, please gently press subscribe, so that in future nights, we'll have more stories to share together. Goodbye, everyone.